The final item of business is a members' business debate on motion 10491 in the name of Keith Brown on devolution of employment law. The debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would ask those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Keith Brown to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please, Mr Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I rise in support of the motion which calls for the devolution of employment law. This aligns, of course, with the Scottish Government's commitment to a fairer and stronger Scotland with the right to fair work at its heart. But the motion is important for all of Scotland, especially those areas where the history of industrial action runs deep, like my own constituency of Clackmannanshire and Dunblane. Clackmannanshire holds a significant place in the history of industrial action in Scotland, being one of the focal points of the miners' strikes of the 1970s and 80s. We must never forget those who, in their fight for fairer wages and safer working conditions, all too often found themselves to be the victims of the actions of particularly callous and uncaring UK governments. The memory of the Clackmannanshire strike serves as a stark reminder of the challenges endured by workers before the creation of this Scottish Parliament, and I know that this history will resonate with many of the members in the Chamber and in many communities across Scotland. For too long, it's been the case that successive UK governments have legislated against the right of Scottish workers to take industrial action. Indeed, this motion highlights two pieces of legislation: the Conduct of Employment Agencies and Employment Businesses Amendment Regulations of 2022 and the Strikes Minimum Services Levels Act 2023, both of which pose a significant risk to the rights of workers in Scotland and across the UK. And these regulations represent yet another attempt by the UK Government to curtail the right of workers to take industrial action to protect the dignity of their labour. Trade unions are an essential part of our democracy and are absolutely necessary to ensure that the voice of working people is heard. And having served as a trade union representative myself, I will always speak up for the right of workers to engage in industrial action. Indeed, Scotland's history is filled with examples of successful collective action, such as the UCS work-ins led by the indomitable Jimmy Reid. And these instances continue to stand as a testament to the power of industrial action, not only in Scotland but across the world. But the creation of the Scottish Parliament has allowed Scotland to right some of the historical wrongs perpetrated on working people by the UK Government, by implementing measures like pardoning those convicted during the miners' strike. I was very proud to take that legislation through this Parliament and to have relatively unanimous support for that measure. The record of the Scottish Government collaborating with trade unions rather than working against them speaks for itself. The notable absence of any NHS strikes in Scotland over the past year, unlike in other UK nations, should not be dismissed. It is a clear indication that the Scottish Government's approach of actively engaging with trade unions works. The devolution of employment law, as called for in the motion, would allow us to take this constructive approach even further. It is for this reason that an increasing number of trade unions from across the UK now back the devolution of employment law, and I am very pleased to say that the UK-wide Trade Union Congress recently followed the Scottish Trade Unions Congress in calling for employment law to be devolved to Scotland, as well as calling for the repeal of all anti-trade union legislation, two measures which the Scottish Government supports but does not currently have the power to deliver. Now, given the fact that both the Scottish and UK TUC stand behind the devolution of employment law in their support for workers and for devolution, I would like to make known my feelings of utter disappointment and dismay at the recent announcement from the Deputy Leader of the UK Labour Party that they have now scrapped the Labour Party's previous commitment to devolving employment law. I have with me today a printed copy of Scottish Labour's 2021 manifesto, which the 22 Labour MSPs were elected on. On page 30, it states in no uncertain terms, "We support further devolution of powers to Scotland, including borrowing and employment rights." So you can imagine my shock, Presiding Officer, when the Daily Record broke the news last week that an email was sent around all the Labour MSPs advising them not to sign this motion, which may or may not, in fact, be in support of one of their own policies. Why would they not want to support something which absolutely reflects their own policies, unless it's the case they don't mean it at all? It reminded me of a long time ago when I was a councillor in Alloa, and I put a motion up which congratulated Alloa Athletic winning promotion to a higher division. It was opposed by the Labour Party, and I asked them afterwards why, and they said, well, it was the SNP that proposed it. They went back to a future meeting and they agreed it and changed one word to it. It's what became known as the Bain principle. If the SNP proposes it, you cannot accept it. But in this case, they're doing that flying in the face of the rights of employers and the need for better employment law in Scotland. And just days before a crucial by-election in Rutherglen and Hamilton West, the Scottish Labour Party is backpedalling on yet another of its most fundamental principles, just to abide by the diktats of Keir Starmer's UK Labour Party. In closing, the motion calls on the UK Government not to further erode the hard-won rights of Scottish workers. Instead, we state that these rights are not just for the benefit of workers, but the betterment of society and our economy. And across the Chamber, we can reaffirm this Parliament's commitment to working in partnership with trade unions and to entrench and build on those rights. Our workers deserve nothing less, and it's high time that we took control. This is nothing contentious for the Labour Party. They've stated they wanted to do this for a number of years. We can take control of our own destiny and craft a country where workers' rights are valued, where fairness is the norm, and where the Scottish Parliament works in partnership with trade unions rather than against them to build a fairer, more just and prosperous Scotland. What we're getting from the Labour Party is an indication they will support nothing. If they can't do it in opposition, they will certainly not do it in government. I would ask the Parliament to support the motion in my name.
Thank you.